The following is the recording of an audio tape, initially recorded on June 16th of the year 2008, recovered from a safe in a run-down building in New Orleans. The whole ordeal began in 2007. When my wife and I decided to buy a house because we had decided a run-down apartment in the middle of Detroit was no place to live. After countless hours of searching for houses, we found a nice one that looked like it had been built a few decades ago in New Orleans, and we decided to buy it. I thought it would remind me of home since I was from New Orleans. After moving in, I noticed a concrete hatch in the basement. I was intrigued by this. I opened it up, and a tunnel awaited me. I noticed a 10x14 sign that was covered in cobwebs and what I initially thought to be rust on the wall. I cleaned it off, and immediately noticed the words, "Fallout Shelter." I thought it was originally a liquor cellar, but I guessed wrong, clearly. As I turned the corner, I was greeted by an 11x11 room with 2 beds, a ham radio, a hand crank that was marked for ventilation purposes only. However it did so, I have no idea. An expired food, along with a heavily pitted kitchen knife. And tucked away in a corner was a well-used New England armed shotgun with 6 or 7 fired shells, along with 2 tins marked carbohydrate supplement and survival cracker. I thought about them while bleakly staring at them and thought, someone actually had this in case we got nuked? I examined the shotgun and wondered, if that were true, then why would there have been fired shotgun shells? The next day, me and my neighbor Eddie went into the shelter to look around. As we entered the main room, he leaned against the southernmost corner of the room, which opened a sliding door. As we headed in, I whipped out my flashlight and clicked it on. I noticed unnerving writing on the wall. "Help me," along with some strange numbers that neither Eddie nor I could decipher, all written in white chalk. The two of us figured that it was an omen. And good God, it was. Eddie noticed something in the corner. A corpse. A fucking body. It appeared to be a female, and had the physiology of a teenager. I dreaded examining the corpse, but I did. Her shirt and skirt were both pulled up, and someone had removed her, undergarments. Someone had... Oh my God. I then turned her, and found someone gouged out both of her eyes, and all of her teeth were broken. Her chest had been stabbed countless times. I immediately thought about the knife I saw earlier. Was she a murder victim? I parted some of her hair, and found that she had been shot with a shotgun slug. I became nauseous, and told Eddie that we needed to leave and inform the cops. The seller hadn't mentioned anything about a fallout shelter, and he sure as hell didn't mention a body in the basement. I pondered about why the man never mentioned it, but alas, a conclusion was not drawn. The day after, I called the authorities about the body, and an Orleans parish officer came over to have a look. As he entered, and the cop noticed the writing, he actually managed to read the writing next to the cry for help. It was a series of numbers. 1 0 0 1 1 2 2 1 9 6 3. As if it were something like a number station or something, which could have explained why the ham radio was there. As he read them, I could vaguely recall that they were important. Yet, why? Then, like a punch in the jaw, it hit me. That was the time and date President Kennedy was pronounced dead. Read with time first. Below that plea for help were the numbers. But why were they there? Was it the date of the crime? Could it have been a coincidence? Or a conspiracy? Why were they there? A good month later, I went to the cops to ask about anything other than the murder of President Kennedy that happened on November 22nd. They gave me a few newspapers from years ago to scan for anything important. The newspapers covered a whole week, rather than just the 26th. The papers mentioned nothing of interest for any of the years, but 1964 had a missing persons report containing the lady found in the shelter. In 1966, the search had been called off, 2 years after it began. A year later, the shelter was dismantled and sealed off for good. My wife and I put a crucifix above where the entrance was, in memory of the dead girl down there, who was later identified as a girl who went missing in 1963. The cops, using DNA found on the body and coating her insides, found that her killer was executed in 1999 for an unrelated crime involving the murder of 4 officers. The shelter was sealed in early 2008. On another note, the murder took place in 1963. What happened to this lady to end with her winding up dead? Why was the bomb shelter never mentioned? It is merely a series of unanswered questions, as far as I was concerned. Questions that even I know will never be answered.